Be the right club. Be the right club today. Yes!
Again, has to be careful of the speed.
What a comeback season for Hal Sutton.
Come right back toward the hole.
About in. That's the second eagle he's made it for this week.
17 years later, Hal Sutton is the Players' Champion.
Well, he's got it going right at the flagstick. It'll be up. It is.
Hey everybody, welcome to another Be the Right Club Today podcast. Hal, it's been a minute.
It has been. You know, we've been doing all these podcasts, and we haven't actually shot an opening and a closing lately. We've made it part of the podcast. So to get back in and us visit is kind of fun, really.
We've had some fun guests on these last couple of weeks. We're going to continue to bring on some awesome guests for you guys. A little bit of a housekeeping note for you guys that have been listening in and enjoying the show. Please go out and like us, rate us on Apple Podcasts, and also too, like don't hesitate to private message us on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter as much. I'm more on Instagram. But man, send us a message if you've got any feedback for us. If there's any topics you'd like for us to discuss. Again, we like to say that we did this for you guys to talk golf and to help grow the game. And you know we really enjoy these. But don't hesitate to give us some feedback if there's anything you'd like for us to talk about or like to share with us.
Echo that 1,000%. You know, the only reason why we're taking the time to do this is because we want to help people get better. And if we can share our experience with you and cut your timeline of learning by a little bit, then we've done a good job. I mean, one of the things I want to add on that is this is a hard game, and it is not easy, and it will not come on a short timeline. It will come on a longer timeline than you want it to be on, but you can get there with a plan. With the right guy helping you, you can get there.
I love when students come in and they're like, man, I'm just a little bit off, and let's just say we work on they need a bigger hip turn, so we're going to work on hip turn a little bit, and the guy's like, oh, this is easy, I'll have this done in no time. Yeah. And 4 lessons later, 2 months later, we're still working on hip turn. It's hard. Golf is hard, and then changing your pattern. We were talking about this off air. Is really difficult.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we haven't known. You know, even with me, you know, it would take me months to make a change that I could actually go to the first tee with and think I was going to make money with it that week. And, you know, it's because I had known. I knew what to expect out of this other way of swinging. All of a sudden, I don't know what to expect, you know. I don't know what the perimeters of it are.
And for our higher handicap listeners at home, that's like going out and playing in your regular Sunday money game, and you just got lessons, and your buddies know that you just got lessons.
Right.
And you shank it off the first hole or slice it out of bounds, and then they're going to razz you and say, oh, you're paying for that? Like, you're getting lessons and you're doing that? You know, and it's hard to compare to a Hal Sutton playing on the PGA Tour, but it's a similar thing. Like, it's you're not completely comfortable with it. You're trying to hit a shot or a ball at a target. You're trying to chase a result a little bit when you're out there, right? And then you're trying to do something different in your golf swing. It's almost impossible.
Yeah, you know, I don't think any of us ever told anybody else when I was playing what we were working on. You know, and your caddy knew it, I knew it, but you know, they could tell that you were working on something just because you were uncertain of it. There's just a difference in your whole demeanor when you're working on something.
Yep. So when you were going through the kind of swing changes, obviously you had to swing tweaks, you had to play. You know, did you try to take a bit of time off? Did you try and just kind of sneak in more reps? Like, you know, how'd you do it?
Well, there was a lot of little tricks, you know. If I was missing it left, which I often did, you know, I'd come home and try to get my path moved out to the right, you know, whatever I had to do to get it moved out. We were talking about that off the air, you know, I'd miss some to the right whenever I did that. But I had to view, hey, I'm trying to miss it to the right. I'm trying to get it to start more right. Yeah. So, you know, but I didn't have long. You know, every time I made a change, I didn't have long.
It's tough.
And by the time you'd played all year long, the last term of the year, the Tour Championship was the last week in October or sometimes the 1st of November.
And then the tour, what was the first tournament in Hawaii called?
It was the tour.
Drawing blanks. I know the Sony was the week after.
Yeah, the Tournament of Champions.
Yeah, then the Tournament of Champions is what the first week.
I mean, you'd gone for 10 months hard. I've usually played 25 to 28 tournaments, and then you'd do outings and other commitments during that time. So you're tired. I mean, you're like, I need a break. I didn't want to have to work on my game.
Weather can be tough, so then you got to travel to go to different places, and it makes it hard. Golf is hard, right?
Yes,
and then it's
hard
to. If any coach says that this will be an easy change, run and hide, because it's probably, most of the time it's not. And if I've said it to any of my students, I'll go ahead and apologize now. So today's podcast, we've titled "It's All About the Face," and I got to give credit to Mr. John Dunnigan, because he there's the song that it's all about the bass. It's all about that bass. I'm not even going to try and sing it, but he has changed that to "It's All About the Face," and we're going to title today's podcast the same. And what we're talking about is the club face. So Hal, of the 100 students that come in a month in here, or whatever the number is, how many of them do you think we talk about club face?
At some point, all of them.
Yeah, just about everybody.
Just about everybody.
So one of the things that we've kind of talked about in a couple of the recent podcasts was, do tour players know where the club face is? And to me, this is such an interesting topic, because I was not a tour player. I came close. I was a good player, but not quite that good. And here's what I would say. I had an idea where the club face is when it was going slow, but I had no idea where the club face was when it was going fast. And a couple of guys have said that they thought tour players know where it is. And I personally don't think, before Dustin Johnson ever saw a swing on video, he had any idea where the club face actually was, if it was closed, if it was open, all this stuff. What are your thoughts?
Well, we talked about this off the air, but I'll see if I can, cover it all again. I feel like I knew where it was at the top. I knew where the intention of it was. When it was going fast, I knew if it started fast and it got open, I had too much to do. But,
Would you say you felt it more when it was off?
I felt it more when it was off. I definitely would say I knew more when it was off. When it was right, I didn't feel anything. And, that's why I say quiet hands. When my hands were quiet, I played good. When they weren't, I said earlier, if my trail arm extended too soon, I knew I was not hitting it well.
So I think that's a perfect little segue into let's discuss a little bit about, face openers and face closers. Okay.
Yep.
So let's help our slicers out first. So 90% of the golfers that hit slices struggle with getting the face closed enough. So what are some things that, let's talk about the face closers, right? And the one thing that we always do in here is we always start earlier than later. So if you're slicing it, the answer is not at impact. The answer is always before, right? We're always, if you're a slicer, if you're fighting balls that are curving to the right, we're always going to look at grip. Always going to start with the grip first. Is your grip strong enough? If you set up to it with and we hate changing grips, but if you set up to it with a really, really weak grip, so if you're a right-handed golfer, your hands are rotated too much to your left shoulder, then that is going to cause the face it's going to make it harder for you to square up the face.
There's nowhere to go with it. You're already there.
Yeah. So the first thing we're going to do is strengthen the top hand, strengthen the lead hand. For righty, it'd be your left hand, and we're also going to tend to roll the right hand a little bit more to the right. So we're going to rotate it towards your right leg, towards your right knee, towards your right shoulder. Start there. Okay. What else? If you were struggling with balls that were going right, and you had to, when you took your break or had the famous story with your dad in Vegas where you had to make a decision if you were going to use your one-time exemption or not, you said that you went home and tried to hook it. So what did you, if your grip was good, so slicer comes in, grip is good, what are you doing next?
I'm going to work on my club face.
Okay, so we got the grip right. We're going to assume that the club face is decent at address. We're not setting up to it with it crazy open.
Yeah, it's going crazy in the backswing or something. It's getting open.
Okay, so
somewhere.
Would you do something? Could you do something in the takeaway to try to keep it from opening too soon, or what? What's the first step that you did? And you said Nicholas said something to you about club face coming off the ball.
He took the heel of the way up.
So almost
initially,
almost
felt like he closed the face to begin with. One of the other things that I worked hard on, and I know Jay Haas worked on it really hard, was if you believe your hands are on one circle and the club head is on another circle, if we maintain centrifugal force, the hands will stay on the inner circle and the club head will stay on the outer circle. But a lot of times people will jerk the club head inside, which will open the face.
Yeah, so I think that's a good one. So we've identified grip number one to close the face, and then trying to make sure that the heel comes back first, which that will also keep the club head outside the hands a little bit longer too, right? And I think that's a good one. Most guys that have the club head outside the hands in the takeaway, so it's kind of this hands-in club outlook, tend to be more drawers of the ball than faders.
Right.
Faders will tend to take it a little bit more inside and come over it. So I think that's good.
So one of the things that the misconception that all of y'all have is if you're missing it to the right, you think if I take it further inside, I can swing further to the right.
Amen.
It's actually the exact opposite of that. If you are taking it way inside, you have to get the club back out in front of you. So you're forcing yourself to go over the top. And if you're going to be that far over the top, you better have an open face.
It's so true. Bless my dad's heart. He always thinks he's got to hook it by taking it drastically inside. And he can hit like low little punchy hook shots at times. But like to hit a driver, he takes it way inside and then comes over the top of it. And he's like, see, I can't draw it. And it drives me crazy. He always, bless his heart. Hopefully he's not listening to this because he's going to smack me. But, so think more Furic, right? Think more up and under, up and around, loopy, the kind of a figure eight kind of feel versus this inside trying to then swing more inside out. It just doesn't work. So we talked grip, we've talked takeaway. Again, if you need to close it, you got to start earlier. This cannot be something that you're just going to time at impact, because if you're slicing it, the face is drastically open. So and the pass too far to the left, all that stuff. So you just closing it's just going to be a band-aid on a big flesh wound. It's not going to do any good. Okay. So let's talk top of backswing, and this is some of the new. This is kind of new, not really new wave. You guys knew about all the wrist angle stuff, but we've kind of gotten deeper. We dive deeper into it now than you guys did. So if we take our lead hand, so for a right-handed golfer, our left hand, we can flex it and we can extend it. You guys called it cupped or bowed. So if you just kind of put your arm out in front of you and you make a fist, if I take my palm to the ground, that is a bowed wrist or a flexed wrist. If I take my palm to the sky, my left hand to the sky, that's an extended wrist or a cupped wrist. Extension / cupped opens the face, flexion / bowed closes the face. Mm-hmm. So for you guys slicing it at home, if you want to get rid of your slices for the rest of your life, give us a fairly strong grip and look up left wrist flexion. Go into left wrist flexion at the top, and I promise you will you might pull hook it or hit it off the planet to the left for you righties, but you will get rid of curves to the right for sure. Guaranteed, no questions asked.
That'll also activate your body if you're going to hit it halfway straight. If your body's not very active and you get the flexion that he's talking about here, you better be active with your body, a la Dustin Johnson.
Yep, DJ, how David Duvall was when he first started playing, all that stuff. Okay, so now we get into the tricky part with this. If we've got a guy that's closed the face or strengthened the grip a little bit, worked on getting the takeaway right, say at the top he's pretty good and he's still fading it. Are there any downswing feels, any thoughts that you did to kind of close the face down? Would you agree that the closer we get to impact with an intention, the scarier it can get?
Well, the more violent it could get, yeah, which could produce wider results, basically, I think.
Yeah.
Or it feels like an electrical shock goes through your body.
Correct. One of the things I've had some success with slicers to get the face more closed is thinking post-impact stuff.
Right.
Like get them to swing a bit more, feel more towards first base a little bit. I know that's a little controversial at times, but trying to get the path more inside out. Typically, the path being inside out will make it easier to get that face to square up a little bit more versus a left path. So like trying to get them to feel right palm down, like they're kind of rolling it over post-impact. I know that's not the answer for a lot of good players, but to get rid of the slice, it seemed to help.
So one of the things I've told you this a bunch. I'd go home and I'd work on trying to move my path over to the right. So what I would do is I would try to make sure that I kept the extension as I didn't extend the trail arm so quickly. I'd try to get the club face square to a little bit shut and I would try to feel like I was catching rain in the palm of my left hand.
Okay.
Instead of
Yep.
this.
Yep.
Too many people that I've seen, I've got way too much of this right now for everybody that's listening out there.
So you're missing it left right now because you're rolling it too much.
I'm missing it left because I've got too much of this going on.
Yep.
But most of the people that we see that hit a big slice never have any of this.
Yep. They're never rolling their forearms. They're never allowing their forearms to come close together. And to me, I think and we talked about this a long time ago on here. I think every great player that's ever played this game learned how to draw it / hook it at some point. I know you said you never really curved it a lot, but just for a maturation process of all golfers, we like to say our slicers have developed the skill to slice it, now go develop the skill to hook it. But it's kind of every good young junior I've ever worked with, they all learned how to hook it at an early age, and then you're trying to tighten them in and then maybe teach them how to hit it fade once they're strong enough.
So, we talked about this a little bit before. I'll go ahead and mention it. To me, I think distance has hurt a lot of good players in many ways, because when I was out there, we didn't really have a way to quantify how far I could hit it. And, I knew whether I was, if I looked at the pairing the next day and there was 2 other names down there besides myself, maybe one of them hit it longer and one of them hit it shorter. I knew what to expect when we went out there. Given that we're all hitting it fairly solid, we knew where our pecking order was in terms of, and I wasn't trying to increase that. There wasn't any new technology coming along that increased us until the Pro V1 came along. Mm-hmm. Nothing increased any of our distance that much.
Yeah.
But I knew that if I shut the face down a little bit, I could make that shot go longer. There was another little trick that I had. I had to aim it a little bit further right so that I could trap it a little bit harder. I could de-loft it. I'd start it a little bit lower and the ball would go a little bit further. And, I think that was bad for me in the long run, is my point.
Yeah. And do you think you mentioned that the distance isn't great for the game? I mean, obviously Rory came out a while back and said that he had kind of let some of Bryson's stuff get to him a little bit, and some of those guys have been chasing speed a little bit. Do you think it's more prevalent at the amateur level because they're seeing what these guys on TV are doing versus it affecting the tour players as much?
Well, you said I didn't think distance was good for the game. That's not exactly what I think. I think you need to be the policeman of your chase.
Yeah.
That's what I really believe. If my son came to me today and said, "Hey, I want to be a great golfer," I want him to get all the distance that God gave him.
Yeah.
But I don't want to, pare it back by any means.
Yeah.
So I don't want you to think out there that I don't like distance. I'd love distance. I'd love 20 more yards. Trust me when I say that. But the truth of the matter is, we only have the ability to do it within ourselves.
Yep.
And if we exceed that, it's like speeding in your car when you know you can't make the curve. Yep. Are you really going to do that?
Yep.
But we do that on the golf course.
Yep.
And
bad things happen.
Bad things happen when we're doing that. And trust me, every one of y'all out there listening, when you're doing it.
Yep. And the crazy part is you increase your club head speed by a couple miles an hour, but then you don't hit it as solid, and it doesn't go as far, versus you slow down a little bit and you hit it solid and you go far.
So be honest with me, Chase. Chase got a lot of club head speed. So normal club head speed, tell them what it is.
118 to 120.
Okay, max?
25.
But when you're chasing max, the first one goes to 122 or 3, and maybe in 4 or 5 swings you can get it up to 125.
Yeah, but that's like falling over all out, like no worry about the golf board.
So let's add one more component to that: efficiency. How much efficiency is lost or gained in that chase for that extra 5?
If I'm chasing, and all the long drive guys are chasing ball speed numbers, they want to hit it solid. They want to see how fast the ball's exiting. If I'm chasing ball speed, my club head speed's almost always in the 120, 121 range. When I get to 125, I can't hit it solid enough to hit it as far, or my ball speed might go up, but I'll hook it off the planet so it doesn't go as far. So when I'm optimal as far as hitting it, say 330, 340, I'm at like the 121, 122 speed.
Okay, he made a really valid point there for all of y'all that have access to TrackMan or some sort of radar. Ball speed, honestly, is more important than club head speed.
Correct. And one little caveat: a lot of these radars, they read the different what the heads are made out of, the material of the head. They read them differently. So some of them are a little slower than others. So back to that point, ball speed is 100% the answer.
So anyway.
A little bit off subject, but
Yeah.
it's good. So let's circle back to, we talked about how we close the face for, let's say, our slicers, our high handicappers, good players. Okay, so to me, the only time a good player comes in and says they're missing it too far right, it's like a stuck kind of block shot.
Right.
Very few good players come in here saying I'm slicing it too much.
Right.
So most of them are struggling with what you said you're struggling with right now is a little bit of left misses. Okay, so let's talk about just some of the things that when you miss it left, what are you trying to kind of look into? We know what do we know? Okay, so a couple things real quick. If we hit it dead center, we know the club face was closed to something. It was probably closed to both the path and the target. It started a little bit left or straight, and it was closed, so it went left. Where we got to be careful about is gear effect. If we hit it off the toe, that causes more hooks generally. If we hit it off the heel, that causes more fades generally. If it's a contact issue, you got to be real careful because gear effect and it can go funky. But from now on we're gonna assume solid contact. So you flush it, it starts straight and kind of curves left, and you miss it a little bit left to where you were wanting to. Hal Sutton, the player from 2000, what did you think? What went through your head?
Well, I felt like my path was too far left when that happened.
And you guys generally looked at it like it was a path issue when it went left.
Yeah, and that's the evolution of the golf swing and what we've learned.
Yeah.
My era, we blame path more readily. And, so I mentioned earlier, I felt like whenever I played best, in the position past impact, my hands felt further away from me. I could say that a lot of different ways. I could say that my trail arm, I didn't straighten my trail arm.
Yep.
If I straighten my trail arm, it's going to follow the path.
Yep.
So my hands will feel further left and closer to me then.
Yeah, that's a great point. So one of the things that we talk about, we've talk a lot in here about low point control, but we talk a lot about this trail arm. And to me, the key to a great golf swing is when and how fast is this trail arm straightening. Mm-hmm. Practically every player that's ever hit a golf ball, their trail arm is going to straighten somewhere between, let's say, a foot and 5 feet past the ball. It's going to straighten somewhere. Some guys did it a little later than that, but just in a general, it's going to straighten somewhere after the ball. For you guys, good players out there, if you're struggling with blocks and hooks, you're struggling with two-way misses, if the grip's good, posture's good, some of the basic mechanics are good, almost guaranteed you have a right arm that is not in control. And it's probably, if your right arm is fairly straight at impact, man, that's a scary position to be in, because that's causing this face to close at a very, very, very rapid rate. If we keep our right arm bent all the way through impact, we can only do so much with our wrists. This right arm extending action, and I'm doing it for you guys listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, this extensor action is a humongous face closer. The other thing that the straightening of the right arm tends to do, as Hal pointed out, is it tends to move the path more to the left. Versus if we keep a super bent right arm, it's really hard to get the path going more left. A bent right arm at impact is typically a push draw pattern. A straighter right arm at impact, like a Mickelson, is typically a pull fade pattern. So just kind of keep that in mind.
So someone that probably the most studied golf swing in the world, Ben Hogan, his trail arm didn't extend until late.
Correct. Super
because he hated left.
Yeah.
So his way of keeping that from happening was to not let his trail arm extend.
Yep.
And it kept him in tilt longer. It just so many things. This arm can change so many things about your golf swing.
Exactly right. And he had really flat lie angles, and he had really long arms, so he could get into this bent position and keep it from slamming shut too fast.
So there's a great point. I don't have long arms, so it's really hard. if you could see, you can see I can't get my right arm, my right hand past my right shoulder over here.
Yep.
So I can't get my elbow to be the first thing to come through. I could get them to be equal.
Yep. So if you think this is external rotation, so if you drive your right elbow into your belly button and your palm is back behind like you were trying to lag the club behind, that would be external rotation. I have a bunch of it. Hal doesn't. He can't do it as much. So Dustin Johnson, Hogan, those guys would tend to have a bunch of right elbow extension. That is a face opener. If we've got a lot of this, we can hold this face open longer to allow our body to get more open to help square up the face. Versus if you don't have it, you're going to tend to be more of a right elbow back, and the hands are going to lead the elbow, and that tends to be a closer. Okay, so again, if you guys are listening in your car or whatever, check us out on YouTube for kind of doing the motion, because we're kind of demonstrating the movements on camera.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's
one of the first tests, we were talking about this too. One of the first tests we do with students, especially good players, is do they have external rotation? Can they make this motion? And if they can, it gives us a lot more options. If they can't, then we've got to move them in a certain way and set up their backswing in a certain way. We can't make it as pretty or whatever as people like to see in like Hogan swing or whatnot. So going back to the open face stuff. So we're missing it left. Now we know the face is for sure shut. So, what we don't tend to do, if it's somebody that's missing it left and has a really strong grip, we won't necessarily change the grip right away. We kind of see how they move. If it's a slicer that has a really weak grip, we almost always change it.
Right.
But if it's a good player that comes in and has a really strong grip, we're not going to change it. Or not always, we will, but we'll look at it first. One of the things for you good players out there that I do think you got to be really careful about is like the John Rahm, Dustin Johnson stuff, where this club face is basically the face is pointed straight towards the sky. The problem with that is that's a de-lofter too. So now we've taken a 7-iron and turned it into about a 4-iron at the top. So now what we have to get into is our favorite is tilt. So now Dustin Johnson has a lot of it's called right side bend or right tilt, where his right shoulder is dropping below his left to help him add shaft lean to help keep the face square or open so he doesn't close it down, and to also help him get it in the air a little bit. And if you don't have that ability, to tilt that much, a closed club face is death for you. Absolute death. And we see that a ton. We see low point issues. We see pull hooks because they're chasing this John Rahm, Dustin Johnson feel at the top, and they can't move quite like they can.
So that's the problem with TV, really, to be honest with you. You see something you really like in there, and all of a sudden you think, well, that's what I'm fixing to do. Yeah. And you might not even be physically capable of it. You may have all the desire in the world to do this, but you physically cannot do it. Well, trust me, that'll be a demoralizer for you.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're going to go out there and attempt to do something that your body will not allow you to do, and you're going to be like a snowball effect.
But
so
Hal,
bad.
you were good. The only reason you were good is because your right elbow was like this at the top, right? Like that was the reason, right? Like Dustin Johnson's good or John Rahm's good because he does this, right?
Yeah, right. Right.
But no one knew, right? And they didn't know. Like you flew your elbow. It wasn't because you wanted to. It's because you didn't have the motion. You had to.
So I'm going to go ahead and step out on a limb here. I worked with everybody whenever I was playing the tour. And, I mentioned to you earlier, no one ever talked to me about the club face. They talked to me about path. No one ever talked to me about tilt. Jimmy Ballard didn't think there was tilt. He wanted you here all the time.
External, internal rotation.
External, internal rotation. I mean, if I wasn't even smart enough to even understand any of it, because I was too locked in to trying to hit it solid. We mentioned earlier, I feel like trying to get more distance really hurt me, because I think I didn't have much of this to begin with. So I could, the bent right arm, I couldn't, my trail arm, I didn't have much of that, and I certainly couldn't afford to extend it too early. Yeah. So when I was trying to hit it harder, I extended it too early, which de-lofted, took it to the left, and I was always trying to hit it a little bit harder. Yeah. I'd run across a shot that I needed a little bit more, and I needed some height on it. So, okay, instead of hitting that 6, I'll hit a 7, and I'll aim it a little bit further to the right. I'll give me a little bit of room to sling it a little bit. Yep. It hurts in the long run. You can't hit that shot but every so often.
That's right. Do you think that for our better players that are fighting left balls, do you think that it's okay for them to experiment with, like, how do they, we like to say, again, our slicers develop the skill to slice it, so develop the skill to hook it. Our good players that are missing it left, they've got a chronic left miss. They've developed the skill to hit it left. They need to push. They need to add some right balls in there to kind of balance it out a little bit, right? Is it okay to experiment? Like, where I'm going with this is, nowadays, if you get on YouTube or you get on Instagram, you're going to see a lot of flat left wrists, a lot of bowed left wrists, and all this closed club face stuff. But if you look at your era, you look at even 20, 15, 10 years ago, the majority of the tour players were slightly extended at the top.
Fred
Couples, Jack was, you were. I mean, some of the best. I mean, Hogan at times had more extension than flexion.
Right.
I've had quite a bit of success with some of the better players by getting them to extend it a little bit at the top, just to give them some room and let that face open a little bit. So my question to you is, for the guys listening, is it okay to experiment with just about anything to see what works?
Yes, absolutely. I would say that as loud as I can say it. The problem is, the better you are, the less time you have to work on it, because there's another tournament coming up.
Yeah.
And,
that's a good point.
A human being, we need a little time to gain some confidence. In the last podcast, I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit, but, Paul Azinger talked about self-belief versus confidence, and the hardest people to work with are the ones that have a real strong self-belief, because they have that internal confidence that says, I know what I'm doing. They might not know what they're doing, but they still believe that their way is a good way, and they have the feel of their way.
Yeah.
They may not know what the numbers say their way is, but they know what that feel is.
Yeah, and after talking to him, I've thought about that a little bit. And so, to your point or to both of our points of experimenting with the good player already has some self-belief. They believe they can play. Go experiment to build the confidence.
Right.
Go work on figuring out ways to start that. Even if you go out, you're fighting a chronic pull or pull draw, and you go out to the range for 2 weeks, and you're going to try and start every ball to the right. Figure out how to do that, whether it's with a little bit of wrist angle stuff, whether it's you figured out this right elbow external rotation. We'll talk about some other ones, and go do it. And that's how you build confidence, to where next time you get up on that par 3 that gives you fits with trouble left, you can say, man, I know how I've hit 25 shots in a row in the range that all went a little bit right. You can aim at that flag and shove it to the right.
Here's an interesting point. I always knew my game was coming around whenever I could start the ball further right of my target and start it on that line and get it to draw back to the target. I knew I was close to playing good when that happened. When I could not start it to the right and I was having to really be on the money to make it go straight, I knew I was borderline of fixing to suffer. And I didn't know why. If we'd had this stuff then, I would have known exactly why.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the advantage that a modern-day golfer has now.
Yep. One of the things to keep in mind, too, about you closers, the guys that struggle with left, more loft is going to go left more than less loft is. And you've got to make sure. We've been doing some tests with wedges and 9 irons and 8 irons with magnets on the club, and a lot of good players have come in here, and their face has been pointed way farther left than they assumed, based off just how loft kind of distorts where your face is pointed. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's a lot easier to hit a little pull with a pitching wedge than it is a 4 iron. 4 irons tend to cut and wedges tend to draw. So just keep that in mind. If you got an open face with a wedge, it's a flop shot. It doesn't curve to the right. You got an open face with a 4 iron, it's curving to the right. It's not that much. So we've talked about, so left wrist extension, lead wrist extension, palm to the sky, kind of trying to get your knuckles closer to your watch. That's extension. That's going to open the face. So if you've got, again, chronic left misses, you can extend a little bit to open the face. The other thing that in transition, this external rotation stuff will help first move down, help open the face. And in a perfect world, like Hogan, we keep the face fairly square-ish to the arc, and then we completely square it up with pivot and a right arm that's slowly straightening in conjunction with our pivot, right? That's kind of perfect.
Perfect world.
If we can do it, and it doesn't exist, right? So for you two-way missers, you've got to be real careful about this trail arm straightening out too soon, okay? The other thing that I would say that's a tends to be an opener, all things being equal, is weight transfer. So for you guys, if you guys are fighting big left balls, especially curves left, especially hooks, if we're back too far, if we've got too much tilt away, what happens is you run out of right arm, you run out of room, and then it's a flash flip hook. And so if you can make sure, if you videoed face on and you saw on the downswing your head kind of stayed centered, got forward a little bit, didn't just fall back, that's going to be we'll call it a face stabilizer. It's not necessarily going to take all left out or all right out, but it's going to take some of the big misses out. Too many people that are too far back, that have too much tilt. This is how Hal and I first met, was this subject. We end up having a lot of violence at impact. Lots of tilt is violence.
Yeah, well, one of the things, you use the word I use a lot, if I never felt any violence in my golf swing, speed is one thing, but that's not violent. A sudden burst of speed is the correction, always. And you feel that. When you have awareness of where the club face is at or anything else, and you're trying to fix it, you may not consciously be able to define this, but your subconscious mind knows exactly what to do to solve this problem, and it can do it just like that.
Yep.
You can slow your body down so that you can extend your right arm. There's 1,000 things you can do. Now, the timing of that may not work at all.
It's impossible.
It's impossible to guarantee it,
yeah.
But you might pull it off.
Yeah. It's like our people that come in and say, "Man, I'm an early extender. I jump too much at impact." Yeah, that's the fix.
Yeah.
You're doing it because if you didn't, you'd dig a crater to China.
Right.
You'd break your wrist.
Right.
So it's not getting you to do that. It's getting you in a better position somewhere earlier.
Yeah, but they always feel the fix, and that's what they think the problem is, and that's why a good teacher can really help you. They'll find the real problem.
Yeah. It almost always starts earlier.
Yeah.
Always starts earlier. One of my favorite questions and discussions to talk with you about. So hopefully we gave you enough about closers and openers. And if you have any more specific questions about that, please send us messages. It's not completely black and white because you can tilt and overcorrect and how everybody moves. People are messy. People move differently. So anytime if we said somebody that's extended at the top is always going to hit it right. Somebody comes in and they're extended and they're fighting big hooks. So just everybody's so different. But if you guys have any other specific questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. One of the questions we have written down, Hal, is do we have total control of our golf ball? You're one of the best to ever hit it. Did you have total control?
Well, if I did, it was short-lived, and I doubt very seriously that I would say I had total control over it at any point in my life.
So knowing what you know now, to try to get, let's say your normal run when you got total control was 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You'd have 2 tournaments where it was like it was on.
Yeah.
What would you do now? What would you tell Hal Sutton from a few years back to try to get it to last 4 weeks or 5 weeks? Is there anything that you could have done to make it last longer?
That's a great question, and I wish I could give you a definitive answer on that. But I always, when I got good, I thought I could step on the gas harder. When I really felt like I had control, I'd try to step on the gas harder. I'd try to hit it 10 yards further. And, it always comes back to this, and
us golfers, we're greedy, aren't we?
Yeah. I didn't play within myself. What I had when it was great wasn't good enough. Yeah. I want more. That's every one of you out there.
Yeah.
If you're listening to me right now, when you are at your best, you still think you can be better. That's what makes this game so great. Chase is shaking his head for all the people that can't see him out there. That's why we love this game. That's why we passionately think we still have room to improve. I don't. I'm getting worse. Trust me when I tell you this. But, when I got where I felt like I was really calling the pocket if we were playing 8-ball, I knew exactly had the shot I was going to hit, how I was going to hit it. I could look up and see exactly where it was fixing to be and then hit the shot, and there it was right there. It's like, okay, let's hit it harder. Let's make it go through there faster.
This is so interesting. So I'm thinking back. One of my best finishes as a pro, I finished second at the Oklahoma Open. Robert Stroud beat me by a couple shots, and I hit it great. The last day, I was bogey-free going to the last hole. I shot 66 and bogey the last hole. But I was going to see my coach right after that. Like literally, I stayed in Oklahoma City one night and then went down to work with my coach at the time. And he asked me, "What's my miss?" Well, in 3 rounds, I'd hit like 2 pulls. My miss is a pull. I'm not hitting it perfect. My miss is a pull. So now it's on to, and I think about this from a coaching standpoint. Now it's on to him to figure out why is it pulling when I was just
striping it.
So we added something to it. I went to the New Mexico Open 2 weeks later and I didn't hit it good at all. And it's like the other thing that I think back, like 17 is a good par 3 at the family side at Oak Tree. It's a tough little hole, water left, and I that was one of them I pulled, and I got lucky. It hit. There's rocks. It's a P-dye course. It hit on the rocks and bounced over the green. I got up and down. But like I'm hitting it awesome. I took on too much of that flag and I pulled it a little bit. And if that ball goes in the water and I make double or triple, I'm like, I suck. I'm hitting big pull hooks. I've got to fix it. Instead, to your point, it's like hit that dang thing out in the middle of the green and you never even think twice about it. And you're still building momentum. You're still believing. So it's the results of these shots that can completely push us off the path.
So you mentioned to me earlier, did I think, somehow we ended up, how do you create a great ball striker? And I said through a caddy. And if I could caddy for a guy that was really a good ball striker, and I could caddy for him for 4 or 5 weeks, I could make him think he was better and we not change anything because I'd change where he was looking. That's where I think decade is really powerful for everybody out there that's listening. It changes your aggressiveness.
That's what I was going to say. You're basically taking his misses that are going to scar him away.
So the shot that hit the water, hit the rock, and bounced over the green.
Yeah.
I'd have never allowed you. You might have hit it, but I wouldn't have allowed you to think that way.
Yeah.
And that's the key to becoming a better player, is not allow yourself to, walk on the edge of the Chinese wall, Yeah. I mean, stay away from the edge of it. And
so good.
I mean, I think it's a game of percentages. And if you can play the percentages enough, I do have a couple of areas where Scott and I don't 100% agree on things. I think if there's 60 yards of fairway out there, there's been times that it didn't fit my eye and I didn't think it was a shot.
And one thing I'll say to that, because I think this is what you say about that, and I think it's so good. Your gut sometimes has to override based off of if you can commit to it or not.
Right.
If you can't commit to what the book says, then your gut can override that and say, no, I'm committing to a 3-wood because I believe in it more.
So I've always said the gut is the 15th club in the bag. And there are times that you need to be more aggressive, and there are times that you need to be more conservative. And you got to be able to identify those and face the consequences of them.
Yep.
Because when you're pushing the envelope a little bit, and it's like, okay, now's my time.
Yep.
Like there,
Yep.
You could have hit the rock and it could have gone in the water.
That's right.
And
I thought I was 1 or 2 back and I needed to make birdie and I took it on.
Right.
And I hit it 8 feet left of the flag and it just so happened to be the flag was tucked over there. It'd be like you at Sawgrass, say you're 1 shot back at Tiger. Tiger hits it in the back rough and the pin's back left. You're taking it on, trying to knock it in the hole or knock it close to make birdie. And
Right.
if you happen to hook that ball in the water, you would have had enough self-belief, enough
Right.
confidence to say, man, that's what I had to do. That wasn't that my golf swing sucks and I've got to make
Right.
a change. And that was my weakness. My weakness was exactly that. I would have said, I'm hitting hooks, I got to go fix something. Whether instead you would have been my caddy and say, dude, you hit it great all week. Let's go get him again next week.
So I said caddy, it could be coach too.
Yeah.
So somebody has got to identify the real problem.
So powerful.
And it's not always a mechanical fix. Sometimes it's a mental fix. And, if you're just an amateur trying to be better, you don't have somebody watching your game that close. You need to be the watchful eye and your own sports psychologist that says, hey, my thought process was poor there. My dad did a lot of that for me. I mean, he would tell me all the time, Hal, you're thinking terrible, or, what were you thinking there? And he might not have had the answer, but he forced me to look into it to get an answer.
To think about it a little bit.
To think about it.
So perfect segue. Black and white versus gray. What does that mean?
black and white is a swing change. That's something that we can identify with. This is what we're working on. Gray is where everything just is happening. And I played my best golf when it was gray, and I had one thought. It could be, we talked about, could be two thoughts. Could be a setup. I want to get set up correctly. And then there was something swing-wise that I was thinking about. But, boy, you clutter that up with two or three thoughts and
hard to perform that way.
Hard to perform that way.
Shooting scores needs to be, I hate to use the word external, but more external, more like target-oriented, more tempo rhythm oriented, more simple things that you can try to do rather than specific things to like get your right elbow in a certain position or any of that stuff. It's too difficult to, if your goal is to, if you're playing in a Ryder Cup format against another country club, you going out there with a bunch of swing thoughts is not the recipe.
So this is kind of cool. I just thought of this as we were talking about this. Everybody knows that I gave a lot of credit to Jackie Burke. I thought that he shared a lot of things with me that helped me become a better player. And one of the things that he said to me that really turned my game around, he said it to me in 1997, and from 98 to 2000, I played as good as I ever played in my life. And he said something about you got to make sure that you catch your speed at the ball or after the ball. And you're catching it too soon. So we've talked about several things on here that said, if I extend my right arm too soon, I'm catching speed far too soon, and I'm not getting past the ball with it. So, see, Jackie didn't even know how to tell me that in a term. I mean, that's a gray term, what he said. Yeah. That's why I brought that up. That's how golfers from my era, we dealt with this, was very gray areas, to be honest. It was a feel. It was throw the paint against the wall and see if it stuck, basically.
Exactly right.
Now we can deal with things that are black and white. And I don't know how Hal Sutton, a young version of Hal Sutton, could handle this. I don't know what I would have done, because I'm not going to ever live in that when I had physical ability. But I just think everybody that's youthful has a serious advantage now because you can know a lot about this. Yeah. Actually pulling it off can be difficult.
And going back to that question about a young Hal Sutton trying to extend really good ball striking for 4, 5, 6 weeks, my answer would be you come in here and you capture it and you just leave it and store it. And then we know kind of where the best version of Hal is. And when you play 2 or 3 weeks in a row, it gets a little bit windy on the back nine at one of the tournaments and you hit it good, but you felt something creeping up. You look and it's like, oh, your weight's a little different, or oh, your pass moving a little different. And we kind of try to nudge you back. And, you, as you've always said, you kind of porpoise through really, really good. And we try to continue to just narrow those gaps. And I think that's what the iPhones, and that's what, look, the phone, we talk about technology, the phone has done more for the golf swing than anything. YouTube is full of good golf swings, good quality golf swings, because we've got great cameras. TrackMan's helped more from a fitting standpoint, obviously helps from an instruction standpoint, but just being able to see your swing so good now, so well now, I think is huge. And that's what I would have told you to do. Get it on video. If you've got the 3D or you've got all the other data that we have, get it all. You don't need to know it per se, but we need to know where it is. And then you come back and it's like, oh, hey, look, your setup's a little different. Something's a little bit off.
Well, play a lot of golf. I think today's world likes to hit a lot of golf balls, and it's slow playing golf. And back whenever I was learning how to play, there wasn't a lot of people playing golf, so it wasn't so slow, so I could play all day long. Yep. But seeing the ball start on your lines where there's trees on both sides, it's hitting it against this tree edge and drawing it off of that tree edge. It's just there's no substitute for seeing it in action
and experimenting with
experimenting on the golf course.
Well, this was it's been a while since we've sat down. This is fun. It's fun to get back and grind on some of these topics. We have a lot of these discussions off air, and we're always like, man, we should have got the mic out and talked about it. But this was fun. So I'm gonna echo one more time. Feel free to reach out to us if you guys have any feedback at all. If you like what we're doing, if we've helped you with your game, would love for you to give us a review on any of the podcast platforms that allow for that. And like I said, my Instagram's always open. I don't check Twitter as much. Hal's on Twitter a little bit more, but we're always open. And if you have any questions or topics you want us to discuss, guests you'd like for us to have on, please reach out. Hal, take us home.
Well, Chase and I enjoy doing this. We wake up every day trying to figure out a little bit more about this golf game. It's bewildered us. Trust me, we don't have all the answers, and it's a joy for us to explore. And if we come across something we feel like can help you, we're going to throw it out there. So, like Chase said, fire your questions towards us and continue to watch, because we're going to keep bringing stuff to you on Be the Right Club today.
Be the right club today. Yes!